Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Broadhead and I just moved here from Utah. So this is my first year teaching here in Washington, and I am currently a 7th grade Spanish language arts teacher at Totem Middle School, teaching for Federal Way Public Schools. Here's what I look like, and this is FlipGrid, which is the main video recording software that I like to use. So this is how you would record something. Go in there, click record. And this is what I am going to present on today, but also in addition to just talking about how I use FlipGrid, I'm going to explain the protocols that I use, graphic organizers, the Rubric, as well as giving feedback, which helps promote and extend discourse. And that's why I've titled my presentation Utilizing Video Recordings and Feedback to Develop Speaking Skills. And all the examples that I will be using today are based off of my students that I had when I was teaching in elementary, 4th and 5th grade, at a dual immersion school in Utah. And so the examples that you can look through and watch in the presentation, if you would like to go and watch some of the students and how they performed, they're all younger students, although I currently teach middle school. But I believe that these activities, these protocols that I've developed will help your students at any level, up and all the way including adults. So usually I give presentations, they're with live people, and I ask them at the same time that they're there, I ask them to tweet at me while I'm presenting. So here's my Twitter handle. I don't know if you want to do that now or if at any point, but it'd be fun if you want to interact with me there on Twitter. That's my handle. My objectives today is you will be able to describe FlipGrid. You will learn 3 protocols to extend discourse, and then list a variety of uses for video recordings. So what is FlipGrid? FlipGrid is a website and app that allows users to record and share short videos. I believe the maximum length right now is 10 minutes. But if you try to record videos and save them or share them, upload them, any other way, you'll know that, I'm sure if you've done that, you know that it's very difficult to find a place to store them and to share them. And so FlipGrid is a great place to do all those things: record, store, and share videos. So why FlipGrid? Why using video recordings? Well, using video recordings helps the students verbalize their thinking and therefore develop more oral language skills. It encourages everybody to join in and participate because you don't have to do it all together. I'm sure you guys have heard the word by now, ever since COVID hit, asynchronous. So what are students doing when they're not in your class? Well, this gives an opportunity to speak and for you to listen, even though they may not be in your class or in the same room. So everyone can participate in a speaking activity. Also, when they produce quality utterances, so they record something and it's high quality, that is comprehensible output that they're creating, which then can be comprehensible input not only for themselves to review later, to remember how they did it, but other students. It should lower their affective filter, although at first it's very nerve-wracking. I don't necessarily have a lower affective filter, even though I'm just by myself recording this. But the more they get used to recording and not having anybody watch them when they're speaking, it does lower anxiety. It also should promote some confidence and self-efficacy. Asynchronous, there's the word that is now overused. It's good asynchronous oral practice, something they can do on their own, because asynchronous practice gives them the opportunity to pre-plan and then therefore have a focused speaking event. They can clearly communicate what they're thinking and saying, and then it increases their oral production because they have time and a purpose to speak as opposed to spontaneous or the pressures that come with speaking in a dialogue or in front of the class. And then also they can review what they spoke about, they can re-record, and that way they can evaluate their own production. Also, another key component is peer-to-peer feedback. So using the process, the protocols that I'll explain. The last one is giving feedback, but having students give feedback to one another. Once they internalize the rubric well enough that they can explain it to another student, they then take the load off of you, the teacher, of having to always be the one who knows everything in the language. And so now they can be experts in parts of language, or they can learn how to develop higher proficiency using these protocols and the rubrics that we develop. So they share that responsibility. It also gives an opportunity for scaffolding, peer-to-peer feedback. Often the way that a student explains to another student can be more accessible and understood than a teacher to a student. And they can explain if they learned something or they learned how to overcome some sort of difficult part of a speaking task. They can explain that because they have that experience, and they can explain what they did, as opposed to the teacher trying to think of how to do that. And then also peer-to-peer feedback, depending on how you do it, lowers anxiety, because once they give enough feedback, if it's structured enough and explicit enough and follows the routine of the protocol, it should make them feel less anxious because they have done their best, but then they're getting specific quality feedback on what they can do to improve. So then now they are motivated to speak more, especially because trying to impress each other, now that they have an audience that's not just their teacher, impressing one another is very intrinsically motivating. So how do we do that? There's 3 protocols that I've developed. The first one is you give a prompt and then the students answer. Then you give them the rubric and they evaluate that answer. They evaluate themselves, but they also evaluate one another. And after they evaluate one another, each other, they can give specific explicit feedback using sentence starters to reference parts of the rubric where they did well, met the expectation, or they didn't do well, and why. So each one of these protocols takes approximately 2 to 3 mini lessons, about 30 to 45 minutes each. So this is something that you build up over weeks or months, depending on what time you have and what you want to put into extending discourse. So the first one, answer the question. So to answer the question, I give the students the opportunity to write, and they use a graphic organizer with the 5 questions that help give more details. So, first one in this example of ¿Qué te gusta comer? What? So, the very first time that I do this, I pick really simple questions like ¿Qué te gusta comer? Or ¿Qué te gusta hacer? So what do you like to eat? What do you like to do? And then I fill the answers, crowdsource them from the students. What do you guys like? Hamburguesas, tacos, whatever it is. And then I model how to fill this out with them. So say this was empty, you could ask them, what do you like to eat? Tacos. Okay. Where do you like to eat them? It's an example. We could say, Boost. What's a popular place to eat taco? I could say Taco Bell, I guess. Terrible place, but that's what came to my mind. ¿Quién? Who do you like to eat tacos with at Taco Bell? Con mis amigos. ¿Cuándo? Después de la escuela. ¿Por qué? Son ricos. So I could give them the sentence starter, a mí me gusta comer. They could copy, or if they're writing, they can write them and just use this as a reference. A mí me gusta comer tacos en Taco Bell. So you need that preposition. Con mis amigos. And you can do punctuation later too. Después de la escuela, and then ¿por qué? Son ricos. So now you just, instead of having a one-word answer, which is common, ¿Qué te gusta comer? What do you like to eat? Tacos. Come on, give me a full sentence. Me gusta tacos. Me gustan tacos. This is how you get them to say more. You think, well, with who, where, when, why. So that's the first step to get them to break out of very simple answers. So after you get them to think of how they're going to answer the question and how they're going to do it with more details, you use that paragraph that they created, use that to record in FlipGrid. So then you'd go to FlipGrid and then you would read it out loud. So then you'd go into here, and then I always tell them to use the sticky. So if we go back, I just tell them to copy it. So if they're all on computers, they can do this, or if it's on their paper, they can just read off their paper. It's like a sticky note that way. But if it's all digital, they can write copy. You click record. A mí me gusta comer tacos en Taco Bell con mis amigos después de la escuela porque son ricos. Go next. A mí me gusta comer tacos en Taco Bell con mis amigos después de la escuela porque son ricos. And then you take a picture. You can do weird stuff. Kids love this. Variety of things you could put in there. I often like to put in sunglasses. You can also draw. And then you click next, upload your video, put in your name. Add in there. You can put in a title. You don't have to put in a title, and then you click submit. That's how you record the video. So then, after they've done that, well, here's an example if you'd like to look at them. So there's an example of a student that answered the question before he had the graphic.
Okay.
You can watch that on your own if you'd like. And then here's an example of him after.
A mí me gusta
Don't
comer
need to use the
pizza.
graphic organizer.
A mí me gusta comer pizza en mi casa. A mí me gusta.
You'll see that it uses complete sentences. They're repetitive and they're very simple, but they sound a lot more like he's speaking Spanish and that he's using the target language the whole time than he did before. It's more organized, more structured. It gives him more of a purpose of what to say. And then after they've recorded it, so you've practiced with them, you've modeled with them, and then they've recorded on their own the question, then you go to creating a rubric. So they need to evaluate themselves and then eventually one another using a rubric. So I created a rubric with the students. So I'll give you an example of a rubric that we created together after I asked them what makes a good answer. And to help them think of what makes a good answer, aside from some of the thoughts they might have, is I answered the questions that I asked them. And I gave lots of details. I gave lots of transitions. I made it cohesive. Described the things that I was talking about. And when I did that, they said what they needed on the rubric. They said we need to speak longer. Many students at first do not say enough. So how can we get them to say more? Some students at first will try to speak the target language and then go back to English. So we make a part of the rubric is the expectation to only speak the target language the whole time. Also, we want them to promote discourse, so we want them to use transition words, first, next, last, also, and then one other major issue is they don't speak clear enough. When they talk, we can't understand what they're saying. So we put that in the rubric. So here's a rubric that we created together as a class. here's the categories. We had clarity, 5 questions. Okay, so who, what, when, why, where. Complete sentences, if it's interesting or not. That one was really good because if it was interesting or not, created an open-ended type of opportunity, an open-ended feedback opportunity, so that the students could explain what makes something interesting. Is it the type of details? Is it the variety of details? So that then gave more opportunities to discuss how do we make it interesting. And then the amount of Spanish or the target language, if you're teaching another language, that they use in their speaking, and then a time limit. So we want them to at least speak for 45 seconds. And then transitions is something that we add in, usually not at first. So you can add these different categories over time, or you can put as many in it at the beginning if you want. And then I'm using a single point rubric right here. So this is something that I've discovered from College Pedagogy, and I found to be the most effective rubric personally, because it gives the expectation of this is what quality work is. This is on level, so on the eval, that's on level. And then if you can do more than what's on level or what's expected, you need to actually write it out. What makes it better than being on level? And then in here, the concerns, or preocupaciones in Spanish. So what made it less than on level? So it often forces students to want to just say it's on level so they don't have to talk. So that could be an issue you need to overcome. But them having to explain and defend if it was below or above level was a nice activity, and I thought was very useful. So we have this rubric. We watch the students' examples. So I'll put up a video of a student answering a question, and then I have them recreate this rubric on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper. They hurry and draw out this rubric just like I have it here with the 3 columns. And then as they're listening, they grade the students that they're listening to. They grade the videos. Then after they grade the videos, we discuss it together and we norm. So we have a little norming session where inter-rater reliability. So we talk to one another and we say, well, do you think that was clear? Why or why not? And have a few students explain their thinking. Do they answer all the questions? And then sometimes we're confused. Well, we had to watch the video again and then check. So the next step, the 3rd step in the protocol, was giving explicit feedback. So we correlated each category within the rubric with sentence stems that the students could use to give one another in order to explain if they met or did not meet the criteria in the rubric. And so here's all the sentence starters, just give them straight up. Hablaste claramente or no hablaste claramente? Did you speak clearly or you didn't speak clearly? Respondiste a cuántas preguntas? You responded to 2, 3, 4, 5. So of the what, who, when, where, why, did you answer every one of those questions? And then I would also tell the students to explain which ones they did not answer. So they could say something like, you responded to 4 questions. You missed when. You didn't answer when you like to do something or whatever. You spoke in complete sentences or you did not speak in complete sentences. It was interesting or it was not interesting. No fue interesante, por qué, and then you explain why. You have to explain why. Hablaste in how much percentage of Spanish was it and for how long. So they would watch the video, rate the video with the rubric, and then come here where they're giving explicit feedback. They would then use these in their response to tell them how well they did after they evaluated with that rubric. So if you click in here, you can do this on your own time if you like, but going through my presentation, if you click on these folders, you will see a bunch of my former students and some of the responses that they gave. If you want to see examples of of actual videos after they use this protocol. And here's from my partner's class. She also collected some samples. So go ahead and check those out if you'd like. So all of this leads us onto a path where we practice the protocols and we practice increasing the difficulty of the questions or the task at hand by following the same steps. So you can change the question, follow the same protocols. So at first they get really comfortable answering the question, ¿Qué te gusta comer? You could even do that same question more than once after they figured out how to speak better. After they saw a bunch of other examples from all the other students, they know how to give more details and make it more interesting. Well, then you could switch to a new question, but same difficulty, ¿Qué te gusta hacer? What do you like to do? So from what do you like to eat, new question, what do you like to do? Then, if you want to, you can change it from like a high novice high type question to now a clearly intermediate, high, you're listening out of this type of question. Cada día vas a recreo. Durante el recreo hay muchas opciones de actividades. ¿Qué actividad prefieres y por qué? Every day you go to recess. During recess, there are many options of activities. What activity do you prefer and why? So one of the main reasons why you make a question longer, it requires a student to listen and pay attention, which increases some difficulty in their ability to respond and give a good answer. But the other reason why you give a longer question is because students are taught that they need to reformulate the question as a strategy to answer it. And so if you have more in the question, that then signals to students that they need to speak more. So the difficulty increases just by making the question longer. The next thing you could also do is ask an advanced question. You could talk about time frames. What happened during your last recess experience? What did you do? Who were you with? The next thing that you can do is you can increase expectations. You can add. So you could also add oraciones compuestas, compound sentences, complex sentences, particular vocabulary they need to use. Then the other thing that you can do to extend more discourse, increase their ability, their proficiency level, is to increase the quality of feedback. You can ask students to be more critical of one another. So some other activities that we use this protocol for, we first started with using it for Apple practice, which is like an OPI speaking test, but for younger students. So we started it first to practice for that, but then we realized there's so many other uses. We used it for social language practice to just talk about greetings and getting to know one another and small talk. We used it in other content areas, math and science. FlipGrid was useful in those areas, but also this particular process, these three protocols that I've explained. Reading fluency, so when they read, they can read out loud and record it, and practice reading faster and also accurate. They can interview one another, they can interview other students, or they could interview other people and record it in their FlipGrid. And then it was really nice to use it for parent-teacher conferences. You could also quickly share this with colleagues, other teachers, or with their families. And that is how I use FlipGrid in the classroom, and the protocols that I use to get students to speak more, speak higher quality. So if you want to collaborate with anything, for example, you want to use FlipGrid in your classroom, and you have students that are approximately at the same proficiency level as my 7th grade students, which is probably intermediate high or so. We could do an exchange, or if you have other 7th grade students, we could, but maybe you're in a Spanish 1 type of class, we could just do really basic things, and kids love to interact with one another, and because it's asynchronous, that gives an opportunity that you do not have to plan a time. So that's another good use of FlipGrid. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, go ahead and email me. And thanks for